on its acquisition, those that supply its needs, and that degree of influence isn't going to be as easy to accomplish specific goals as it is for the Army to, or the military to do that within its organization. Both of these are going to be a challenge, though. There's also a goal to have 25% renewable energy by 2025. Of course, what that means is gotten changed in definition a couple of times already, but right now it means 25% of the energy that's used to support the facilities on the base. So 25% of that to be from renewable sources by 2025. And of course, that's going to take some fairly significant scale operations to do much of that from military lands, which is one of the goals. I don't know how realistic that goal is. It could also be done entirely by just purchasing renewable energy credits. And we'll take a look at the progress towards that goal. So those are some of the key goals that relate to this vision of sustainability. There's a number of other goals, but I don't want to go after too many of them. So what's the progress towards these, and what is the influence that the Army exercises? First, I want to look at this phenomena of sustainability planning that's occurred. Every one of these locations, forts throughout the country, in Europe, in Korea, in various places, these are all locations in Europe, has conducted sustainability planning workshops. They're not just about things inside the fence line. The utility provider, the water provider, etc. They are involved in these workshops. And this is where they're sitting down and saying, how can we reduce our footprint? How can we reduce the amount of energy we consume, the amount of water we consume? What sort of agreements do we need with you, our neighbors, to achieve some of these goals and reduction? So all of those workshops, the color coding has to do with what year, what part of the Army they're part of, etc. But all those workshops have been conducted, and we now are working with the command over the installations to look at how should we be integrating these outcomes from these workshops into the overall strategic plans for these installations. Of course, to do that, you need some data about what are the interactions between the installation and the community. I want to point out here that we are, through the years, to provide inputs into those workshops. We've done many things, some of which have come here from the University of Illinois, like the LEAM activities. This is just a model showing light coming from Columbus, Georgia, onto Fort Benning, and what kind of impact it has. For example, this whole area of Fort Benning, you really don't want to try to conduct night vision training there, because you've got a lot of lights there. In night vision training, you want to do in a dark place. So it's those kinds of issues, regional issues, that need to be addressed in these sustainability planning efforts, because one of the issues about sustainability is, can that base sustain the mission that's assigned to that base through the future, and how do the community activities affect that? We've also done this study for the Army Secretariat, over installations and energy and environment, and this is a look at where are vulnerable watersheds all across the U.S. And we looked at 24 different factors of vulnerability for these watersheds. These dots are where there are installations. What we next need to put on there is, okay, we make a weapon system like a tank. Where are we doing the manufacturing for that? How much water is being consumed? What's the energy consumption at that location? What are the economic impacts at that location? And how do the places where we're consuming water, not only for where our bases are, but also for our acquisition processes are, how do they marry up? Because if we look at that, you see there's lots of bases in watersheds where there's vulnerability or high vulnerability ratings. We'll probably see there's also lots of manufacturing in those. And that means that we need to be thinking about what kind of partnering, what kind of sharing agreements, what kind of water reuse things we're doing in those watersheds, et cetera. So that's sort of the next step of how do we take into account some data about where our operations are in relationship to what we're doing in those locations. Another important regional issue for us is how do we partner, and this is a plan that we're working right now in the Northwest, but there's similar efforts going on in the Southeast and the Southwest. Where should large-scale renewable efforts go? How do all the federal organizations in the area work together for the transmission of that renewable energy? In the Northwest, they have a big advantage because Bonneville Power Administration is one of the partners in this discussion, and they can move the power from wherever it's generated to the users. But that discussion is about where do we put large-scale. We looked at that renewable energy issue, and the efficiencies are gained when you do fairly large-scale solar or wind in terms of the cost per megawatt produced. So another regional factor. Let's take a look at marketplace issues. One of the easiest things to look at from the defense point of view is buildings. Here the Army has had a history of using sustainability rating tools back from 2002, where we did a one-off from LEED, which we called Spirit, that was developed right here at our lab. And Don, were you part of the team that put Spirit together? That was our first step in having a sustainability criteria for buildings that moved to LEED Silver in 2009, and now we've added LEED Silver plus ASHRAE 189.1. Now let's take a look at those. Here's the time frames that, even though it was 02 that we came up with that, it didn't actually impact. There's always a couple of years lag between we've got the standard and we're implementing the standard. So Spirit in about 5, between 8 and 9 here when LEED Silver became the standard. And ASHRAE will be out here in 12, the standard, ASHRAE 189.1 plus LEED Silver. So tightening standards in terms of energy efficiency, water use, et cetera, through this time frame. This is how much the Corps of Engineers is spending on construction.